Hi guys, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in January. Now, January was quite a good reading month for me. I managed to read 9 books, which was a lot more than I have done in previous months, partly because of 2 of the books I'd pretty much read most of in December but couldn't quite finish them before the end of the year, so they're in with this wrap up, and also I am between jobs at the moment, so I have a little bit more time for reading, which is great. So yeah, let's get started. This month I felt like I read some really great books, and some of these already are going to be potential favourites for the end of the year, I think, so what a great start to kick off 2023. So the first book that I finished in January was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and this one was just incredible. I couldn't put this book down at all. I just wanted to keep reading and reading and reading, and as you'll see later, I just binged the whole series this month. So this book is actually a YA thriller, and we're following Pippa as she investigates a murder case because she doesn't believe that the guy who was committed, Sal, was actually guilty of the crime, and so she decides to look into this case for her project and starts to uncover some secrets and stuff within this town. That's the main premise of the book, but it's just amazing. Like, this one was really good, and I'm definitely going to want to check out some more YA thrillers like the Inheritance games, and I think the Maureen Jackson ones that I want to read, because I just haven't thought to pick them up before, and this has shown me that YA thrillers can be just as great as adult ones, because this is joining some of my thrillers as like one of my all-time favourite thrillers now, and that's incredible. This one got really creepy in places, like definitely not horror, but there were moments where I was reading this in the evening. I was like, oh, that's a bit creepy, I feel a bit uncomfortable now. So that was great. That really added to the atmosphere in this book. I loved the twists and turns we got throughout this book as Pippa learned more and more about the case and the people involved. That was great, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to keep reading was all the different reveals we got that just blew your mind. And yeah, just a really strong book, and to be fair, the series as a whole was really strong. So I gave this one 5 stars. The next book I finished in December actually finished out a series for me, which is amazing, and this is Katharine, Parr, the Sixth Wife by Alison Weir. This is the 6th book in the Tudor Queens series, where we follow each queen throughout their life and during their time alongside Henry. I gave 3.5 stars to this one. I thought it was okay, it was still really interesting, and I learned quite a bit. I just didn't think it was as strong still as the first 3 books. I think I've said that a lot about books 4 and 5 as well. It was still really good, just not quite as gripping as the first 3. I did like in this one that we got to see a lot more of Henry's daughters, so Mary and Elizabeth, and I really hope that she writes some historical fiction about them, because I would love to read more, but not quite enough to pick up one of her non-fiction works, because I just about got on board with the historical fiction books here. They are still pretty dense in places. So yeah, just a really good time. I think part of the reason why I didn't enjoy this one as much is I did notice there was a lot more religion and politics in this one. I think I noticed it more in this one compared to the other ones, just because the characters in the others I was just so much more interested by. And another good thing about this book that I did like is that obviously Katharine Parr is his last wife, so Henry did die in this book, and it was just interesting to see what happened to the country and the people in court after the king's death, and that made it unique to the other books in the series. So yeah, this one overall was a good read, and I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I finished in January is potentially another favourite, and this is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This is book 1 in the Dark Artifices series, and it is a series that I've never actually read before, so I am reading these for the first time, and I don't know why I put this one off for so long, because this one was absolutely incredible and is possibly going to give the Infernal Devices a run for its money, but we'll see, because I adore those characters so much. But yeah, this one is set 5 years after the events of the Mortal Instruments, and we are following Emma Carsters and the Black Thorns in Los Angeles, and it was just really, really great. We're following Emma as she investigates a series of murders that are possibly linked to her parents' death. And yeah, it's just really, really great. I love the setting. It was nice to be next to the ocean. That made the atmosphere really different and great. Malcolm Fade is possibly one of my new favourite characters. He's the resident warlock for Los Angeles, I think. He was really, really great. And yeah, just overall the characters in this were really, really strong. I think she's really come into her writing at this point with like great characters. We got to learn more about the Fae and the Fae courts and like rules and stuff, which was very interesting as well, and how dark they could be in places. That was quite creepy. And yeah, this book just made me feel like, it made me feel happy, it made me feel sad, it made me very angry and kind of disappointed, if you know how this ends and kind of why I might think that based on what I've just said about my thoughts already on this book. I can't say anything more because of spoilers, but yeah, if I wasn't reading this as part of the Buy the Angel Along read along thing, I would have picked up book 2 instantly. But I'm reading one a month, so I will be reading the next one in February. And yeah, this one, 5 stars. The next book I finished was Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, and this was the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I can't say too much about this one compared to the first one, but we are following Pippa as she takes on a new case. This time it's a missing persons case, and she's taking this on for one of her friends because the police won't do anything because he's not a minor, and they also don't suspect that anything like bad has happened, so they don't suspect abduction or murder, they just think he's ran away. And so Pip takes this up to help a friend, and yeah, she uncovers some more dark secrets about the town and the characters, and it was just incredible. I loved the character growth and interactions in this one. They just got even better as we got to know the characters more and more. That was amazing. And yeah, it was still very creepy in places. There was still those moments where I was like, oh, that's really, really creepy. And yeah, the ending of this book, if you've read this one, you know, the ending to this book is absolutely insane. Just mind-blowing, really. And yeah, it kind of sets up book 3 really nicely. So this one I also gave 5 stars to. The next book I finished in January was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Lucy Foley is one of my favourite thriller authors, and this book came out last year, so I'm glad I finally got around to reading this one. In this book we follow Jess as she arrives in Paris to meet up at her brother's apartment, but when she turns up her brother is missing and nowhere to be found, so she just thinks he's ran off for a bit, but as she stays there she starts to notice little things in the apartment that aren't quite right, and that maybe something bad has happened to her brother. And so she takes it upon herself to find out what happened to him, and also talk to the people who live in the other apartment block just to see what's happened to her brother, and it really just kicks off from there. And it was really, really great. I did give this one 4 stars. So not a 5. I think I did give The Guest List a 5, which is currently my favourite Lucy Foley book. But this one was really, really interesting, and it's sort of a different format to her previous 2 that I've read, so The Hunting Party and The Guest List. In those ones they have this really interesting premise where you don't know who's been killed and you don't know who the murderer is. Whereas in this one you've just got someone who's gone missing, and it goes from there. So I really liked that it was different in that way. There were several twists in this one which I really liked. One of them I did guess, but the rest of them I didn't see coming, so those were great. The things that I didn't like about this book so much is I wish it was a little bit longer. There are quite a few character POVs in this and they're quite short, which with the shorter chapters it made it even faster to read, but I would have liked to learn a bit more about the characters and the character background and just spend a bit more time with the characters. I think that would have just added that little bit extra to the story. And also the other bit that I didn't quite like about this book is there are some flashbacks in this, and because there aren't like page breaks or anything like that, it did take me a few seconds sometimes to realise that I was in a flashback. So that's another thing that just pulled me out of the story just for a second, and then I had to jump back in. So yeah, that's kind of why this one got a 4. I'm still going to be reading every book that Lucy Foley writes, so glad to finally tick this one off. The next book I finished in January was a short story collection, and this was In the Shadow of Queens by Alison Weir. This accompanies the 6 Tudor Queens story, and this one has 13 stories from the Tudor court, but also more modern times as well. So throughout this we got to follow some of the Queen's servants. We got stories from other monarchs, so Henry's brother King Arthur, we got one from him. My favourite stories actually, and the ones that stood out to me, is we had a modern day story set in London, in the Tower of London, and we got to follow a tour group, and there were ghosts and paranormal things like that. That one was really interesting. And then my other favourite story was actually following Katharine Parr's remains, because unfortunately her remains, once she was buried, had some very, not unlucky, but horrific things done to them over time, and they got moved around a lot, destroyed, like reburied. They went on a journey, and it was so interesting to read about actually, and yeah, it all actually happened, which was also great. So yeah, really, really good, and I'm glad I've read these ones because I sometimes don't enjoy short stories. This one did just about get a 4-star. It was so close to being a 3.5, but I think because I enjoyed my favourite stories that much, it just pushed it up that little bit more. Otherwise, some of them I don't really remember much of, and yeah, I will probably reread this again at some point if I'm going to reread the series too, so I'm glad I read it. The next book I finished in January was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the last book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy at the moment. I think for the moment it is just a trilogy, but I really, really hope there's going to be more because I just love this series so much. I want more. And yeah, this book I can say even less about because I think there is the most spoilers in this, and yeah, the events of this really does follow the previous books. But in this book, Pip is preparing for college and she hasn't quite recovered from the events of her previous case, which happened in book 2. She is dealing with the things that happened to her and the trauma she experienced. There is some exploration of trauma and PTSD in this as well, which was really interesting to read about, especially since it happened to a character that we got to know before it happened, so that was really interesting. And I also loved the twists and turns throughout this book. This one I gave 4.5 stars to. I did sit on it for a while. I thought it was going to be a 5, but looking back I wasn't quite happy with how this book played out. If you've read this book, then you know that halfway through something really big and twisty happens, like the craziest thing ever. And looking back, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. Like, I feel like the way it played out well, and it was really great and really good, but that's not really what I wanted for the characters. It almost seemed a bit out of character for me. It just seemed a bit over the top, and if there was any other way to not have that happen, then I want that way. But I don't know how I'd write it better myself, so 4.5 for now. I think if I reread this one with the series, maybe it would jump up to a 5 after I've had the time to process what's happened more. But yeah, I really, really hope there's more to this series, and yeah, like I said, this one got 4.5 stars. The next book I finished in January was a novella, and this was Under One Roof by Hazelwood. I've just got my physical copy here to hold up, so I've got something to show to you guys. But yeah, I am counting these as individual books because if I'd read them when they come out, then I would have been counting them one by one. And I also want to track my thoughts and feelings about each book separately instead of having like one review that glances over all of these anyway. So that's why I'm counting them as separate books, and you'll probably see this one again when I finish off the others. But yeah, this is the first book in the STEMinist novellas, which Hazelwood wrote, and I think she was releasing them last year, and this one just came out physically. And in this one we follow Mara, and her PhD supervisor left her her house in the will, but she didn't mention that it was co-owned by her nephew Liam. So we basically have this forced proximity trope. And yeah, I liked it. I thought it was okay. I gave it 3.5 stars. It does suffer from the problem that I have with like short stories where the romance felt a bit rushed and not as believable as Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain. I definitely preferred the more slow burn, really angsty, and like the sexual tension in those books. I felt that wasn't really here in this book. And yeah, that's mainly why it got a 3.5. Really enjoyable. I'd read it again. But yeah, I just didn't root for the romance as much as I did in the previous books. But I have looked ahead at the synopsis for the other two novellas, and just the setup to those books sound so much more interesting anyway, so I'm hoping I will like those ones even more. And moving on to the final book that I read in January. This one is Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. I did a buddy read with this one with Chatty and Vadna as part of our Fairy Loot read along. So I'm really great that I'm finally starting to make a chunk in my Fairy Loot reads. One down. Yeah, this one was definitely an interesting book. It started off really strong. The first half I really enjoyed and I thought it was amazing. I thought this book was going to get like 4, maybe 4.5 stars. But anyway, I should tell you a little bit about what this book is about. So in this book we are following Violet, and she is the royal prophet, so she can have visions to sense the future and stuff, and the king kind of wants her to help him because the kingdom is cursed, and to sort of solve this the prince needs to find a bride to break the curse, and so Violet sort of has to help him try and find the best bride, but also lie a bit when he chooses not to marry. And yeah, she has to put up with a lot of BS from the prince at times. So anyway, the bits I did like about this book is I really liked the magic in this book. It was really good. I loved that we got to follow like a prophetess. I haven't read any books like that before, and there was a really interesting scene when she was interacting with girls in the kingdom and she got to see little glimpses of the ball from each one, and from that she could then make a bigger picture in a way about what was going on. I really liked that. There are also fairies in this book that are kind of rentable in a way. It's really weird, but they give people enchanted dresses and stuff, so that was really fun and I loved that. I also really love the side characters in this, and there are two, and they really stood out, and that is Dante and Camilla. And they were so good and so intriguing that they kind of overshadowed the main characters in a way. I just wanted to know more about them instead of Violet and Cyrus. So yeah, and with Camilla we got some LGBTQ rep in this, and I really want Camilla to go on and get a sapphic novel because yeah, she's probably the best character in this book and one of the main reasons I carried on reading it. And the other thing I didn't really like too much about this book was the romance. At the start I really liked the back and forth banter and at each other's throats nature of Violet and Cyrus's like relationship, friendship, where they're kind of crushing on each other but not quite. But actually getting to the stage where they got together, it was kind of weird and forced in a way, and it didn't feel right. So that was another bit I didn't like. And the only other thing that I would say about this book is it kind of read sort of younger YA, and I think recently I have been reading books that read, even though they're YA, they feel kind of closer to adult, so I think that just threw me off personally a bit. There is going to be a sequel. If it goes on offer on Kindle, I'm probably going to read it and continue with the series, but otherwise I don't feel I need to. What is really cool is at the end of this you get a little storybook section where it sort of gives you an overview and a recap and sort of wraps it up in a way that you don't desperately need to read the sequel. So I'm glad that was in there really. Yeah, just maybe it should be, I was going to give this a 3.5, but actually going through all my bad points about this book, maybe it should just be a 3. And to be fair, about one of those stars go to Dante and Camilla by themselves anyway, because they're just so great. So if they weren't in this book, then this would even be a 2. Yeah. I'm going to give this one a 3. So yeah, those were all the books that I read in January. It's a shame to end on not a bad book, but just quite a disappointing book compared to the rest of the ones that I read. But I read so many great books this month that I really don't care. I'm super excited to get on with my February reads and just continuing with the Shadowhunter books and some of my series, and yeah, I'm just excited to read again, like I always am, but like more so than normal, which is great. But yeah, let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what did you think, or let me know your favourite book from January. I would love to know. But as always, I hope you are enjoying your current read, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!